And I will update all things now. I have been running late today. This is episode 171 of Armchair Producers. My name is George Tarrant, the delayed George Tarrant, shall we say, along with the man, the myth, the spice in my kitchen, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I am fine and dandy. It's been a busy day for both of us. So if there is anybody who bothers to watch the live stream, we apologize for our lateness, but I don't think anybody does. So I think it's fine. And the people on the podcast don't care.
It's true.
As long as they get what they came here for. And if you are choosing to download this show, thank you for your discerning taste in podcasts.
Yes, exactly.
We have the third week of our new streamlined, more efficient show. We got it at about 130, 140 last week. So we're
146, I think. So we can see if we can try
it down slowly. We're getting there slowly. It's a process. We got some interesting films to talk about this week.
Yeah.
Are we going to start with the chain film?
Yes, absolutely. As is the tradition, so shall it be for all time.
And then we're going to move on to one of George's suggestions for the first time in the new format of the show. We'll be talking about Guillermo Del Toro's Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm.
Academy Award nominated, 2 Academy Award nominated films.
Yes. So
it's
all about the nods today.
The Oscar nods today with, of course, the Banshees of Inisherin, the shoulder-shakingly funny Banshees of Inisherin, which has been nominated for a bunch of stuff. Colin Farrell's up, Brendan Gleeson's up. I think the director's up as well.
Yes.
For Best Director. But you see there's some fuss about Andrea Riseborough's Oscar nod this week of reviewing their processes for people who are campaigning for Oscar nominations, and in the light of, Andrea Riseborough basically doing what everybody's been doing for quite some time, I think, which is basically lobbying the Academy members to get to vote for their movie. But somehow that's been parlayed into a question about racism, but it's not somewhere I'm going to go. You can read about that in the newspaper all you want. But I'm hoping to actually have a look at the film she's been nominated for, just to see if I can figure out what all the fuss is about.
Yeah.
Do you want to crack on and get started with our chain movie this week?
Yes, let's get straight into that. Hang on, I am. Stop doing stupid things. Why am I so stupid? Answers on postcards.
Tune in next week for the answer to that question, and much, much more.
No, not Kate Colin Farrell. There we go. There we go. All right, cool. And so there we go, nerds. We are all sorted. Boom, done. It's all streaming and loading. Done. There we are. Up
it's on the platforms.
It's on the platforms and all the things. Yes. So After Hours. This was your pick.
My suggestion. I forget who our link was again, but
it was John Hurd.
John Hurd, who plays Tom the bartender.
Yes.
This is a 1985 film directed by Martin Scorsese himself.
Yes.
And I had never heard of this film before doing my research.
Never seen or heard anything about
it. Linking it out of Awakenings last week. An ordinary word processor has the worst night of his life after he agrees to visit a girl in Soho he met that evening at a coffee shop. Directed by the great Martin Scorsese in the middle of the 80s. And apparently this is just one of those little hidden gems that has disappeared beneath the waves of a stellar career. Written by a gentleman named Joseph Minion, no relation to the other Minions, I believe. Starring Griffin Dunn, who is not exactly a household name, but some of you might know his face. He's been around the shop for a while. Rosanna Arquette, a very young Rosanna Arquette. Cheech and Chong, Linda Fiorentino, John Hurd, and Catherine O'Hara. many years before they got back together again for Home Alone in 1990. Bronson Pinchot in a very, very small role as well. This is a deeply, deeply strange film.
Yes.
And a very un-Martin Scorsese type film.
Yes.
Apparently, he consulted a bunch of famous directors about how it ended because he wasn't sure. One of whom was Terry Gilliam, which is interesting because the entire film really felt like something I would expect to see from Terry Gilliam rather than Martin Scorsese's. Just the opening of a film in the office place, the sort of banal, bland office place of desk after desk after desk. But when we come in to Griffin Dunn giving Bronson Pinchot a lesson in how to use word processing software.
Yeah.
For the kids out there, when we say an ordinary word processor, we don't mean a copy of Microsoft Word. In 1985, a word processor was a person. But we see him in the office teaching Bronson Pinchot how to use the computer software. And you're like, wow, this really gave me serious Brazil vibes.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it came out in the same year as Brazil. So I can't be sure exactly which one came out first in terms of date. But I felt a real similar vibe there initially. And while it doesn't continue on with that kind of super surreal Gilliam-esque vibe quite as deeply strangely as, if that's the way to put it, it's not as deeply strange as Brazil is. Brazil's a weird fucking movie. It's also great. This one's weird. I'm not sure if it's great. What were your initial impressions?
Well, after you picked it, I had a look at the trailer and it's like, okay, I don't quite know what to make of this movie. So I didn't know what to expect going in. And, it's a Scorsese movie that's kind of lost to time generally. No one talks about this movie. There's not even sort of like fanboys of Scorsese that are now popular in Hollywood just going, oh my God, I grew up on After Hours or anything like that. Okay. It's weird. And it is kind of comedic in the sequential increasing absurdity of it. And I kind of like it, but at the same time, it teeters so much on that line of absurd and ridiculous that if Terry Gilliam had directed this and he had just been full Terry, I think this movie would have been appealing because it's certain expectations. And it almost actually feels, rather than a movie, it feels like a series of innocuous events, almost like I said series, not Siri. Talking Siri.
I didn't get that.
Stop it.
Could you try again?
She's always listening, people. I hear you. Just to place this film in his career, we have Raging Bull in 1980, The King of Comedy in 1982, which was, I think, we talked about last week as being one of our chain movies, that's 4th or 5th maybe on the chain or something. But still, we saw the influence of The King of Comedy in Joker, which was obviously deeply influential on the people who made the Joaquin Phoenix Joker film. Then 3 years after that, we have After Hours in 1985. The next feature he does after that is The Color of Money, and then The Last Temptation of Christ. In between, I did not realize he directed the Bad video for Michael Jackson. But Color of Money, again, maybe also a slightly more forgotten film, but I remember it had Tom Cruise and Paul Newman in it, and was maybe more of a crowd pleaser than this one. But, in amongst that, I mean, again, The Last Temptation of Christ, I'm not sure it remains his most influential work, but I know it won an Oscar. I think Willem Dafoe won the Oscar for that, maybe. But it just goes to show, in amongst that, I guess, an okay film can sometimes fail to stand out when you're directing all-time classics like Raging Bull and King of Comedy. But to follow up on your point, if Terry Gilliam had a hold of this content, of his script and gone the full Monty the way we know he can, assuming, nobody died, there wasn't a hurricane that blew the set away,
God
or
just decided no.
or a coup, or perhaps a meteorite or aliens landed and abducted the cast, or whatever it is that's going to happen to ruin a Terry Gilliam film, because he knows something's going to happen.
Yes.
But it's a good point you made there, because like this sort of feels like a good director, a great director, a master director trying his hand at something that doesn't quite fit his style.
Mm.
And I think maybe people fall into the trap now of thinking, oh, Scorsese, he does gangster films, because Goodfellas, Casino, Departed, The Irishman, it's kind of what he's known for. But if you go back through his career, you can see he's very capable of doing a number of different types of films. But absurdist sort of black comedy is maybe not quite in his wheelhouse as something he's very comfortable doing. This is maybe why he decided to do it. It's a bit like when you see, it's not quite the same thing, but when I always think of Natural Born Killers, it was a Tarantino script. I've talked about this before. Oliver Stone directs it, and you got Oliver Stone directing a Tarantino film, and you're like, they're great filmmakers, but they don't quite click, and it doesn't really quite work.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's kind of what this film was. It's good, but it's so damn strange. And it's kind of played straight so much. But you're like, am I supposed to be laughing at this? Like, a girl's just committed suicide in her apartment and it's kind of being played for a gag.
Yeah, it doesn't make too much, there's not too much of a logic to it. And at the same time, the character of, what's his name? Paul. He doesn't exactly kind of ingratiate himself, especially in modern day socials expectations, as a particularly nice guy, because effectively he seems relatively nice, and the way that the movie starts and the first meeting that he has with Rosanna Arquette kind of sets you up with the expectation, oh, this is going to be almost like When Harry Met Sally, kind of odd couple kind of thing. And then it just spirals in a really unexpected manner with no kind of prelude or setup of you're like that roller coaster moment. Just when you get to the top, they always stop it just so that you really feel that impact. Is like, no, you're just going straight fucking for it.
If I can give a comparison, maybe the film it reminds me most of is a film like The Warriors. In the sense of, if you think about The Warriors, but if The Warriors was a comedy, a black comedy, if you give a gang and they sort of start, we've got this one central event that sort of sets the whole thing off, and they've got to and it's set in New York again. So you want to get from point A to point B. And stuff just keeps happening. It stops them from getting from point A to B quite so easily.
Yeah.
And making that being played for laughs, that's what we've got here. So Paul Griffin Dunn meets Marcy Rosanna Arquette in a coffee shop. He's having dinner, I think. And she starts talking to him, which in New York City, I've been in New York City 3 times. If some rando starts talking to you in a coffee shop, fucking run.
Yeah.
Like, that is one wacky city, I swear to God.
Yeah.
And they sort of strike up a conversation. He thinks she's quite attractive. She seems to quite like him. So she ends up giving him a phone number to call, nominally so he can buy a plaster cast paperweight with like a bagel. That her housemate makes.
Everything everywhere all at once.
And it's a good call. But I think normally to get this paperweight, but he actually gets it's a phone number to call her. He ends up calling her, getting her address, and he just catches a cab to go meet her at her Soho loft apartment. While he's in the cab, he loses all his money because it blows out the window, which was kind of an interesting contrivance. He rolls up to her house. She's got a hell of a weird roommate, Linda Fiorentino, playing Kiki. And just to be clear, this geeky doesn't run a delivery service.
Definitely not.
No delivery service here. See, that was me, giving a Ghibli reference. So you should bottle that. Take a photo.
Let it be noted. 171, it happened.
But it doesn't really quite work out between him and Marcy. Marcy's a bit weird. So despite the fact he's used to speaking of your social norms, he's a little bit pushy about getting what he wants.
Yeah.
And ends up taking off to try and get home, but realizes he doesn't have enough for the subway.
Yeah.
And the guy won't sell him a token, and he tries to jump the barriers, but there's a police officer there, which everybody knows is bullshit. There's never a police officer around in New York City when you need one, or someone's jumping a barrier like that. And hijinks ensue as he is forced to bounce around Soho, trying to figure out how to get back to his apartment in the Upper East Side. I can't remember exactly where he lives.
Yeah, I
but
don't.
Just
really
to tell
know.
you how much of a nerd I am, I did Google how long it would take him to get there.
Okay.
My first thought was like, okay, the subway's busted. You can't get a subway. You got no money for a cab. Fit Shan at your paramour, your potential love interest's apartment. It's Manhattan. It's pretty flat.
Yep.
So walk would be my thought. I mean, I think it's a big thing. It's a big place, but like I think Google would take him about an hour 40 to get from her apartment in Soho to his apartment.
Given the shit that Paul has to deal with, I would happily invest that hour and 40.
And maybe that was on purpose because the film does go for about an hour 40. So it would have been less interesting if he just decided to walk home. But he meets all sorts of wacky characters in his travels, including Julie, the waitress at a bar, who
seems to be somewhat stuck in the past with style music,
sort of a beehive hairdo, and she takes an interest in him and takes it quite personally when he does not return said interest in her.
Yeah.
We meet Tom, the bartender, played by John Hurd, who wants him to help him out by gives his apartment keys to Paul to do him a favor, so he'll give him fare for the freaking subway, and then that doesn't go well. Then he meets Gail, played by Catherine O'Hara, and that's when things really get serious. In the sense, there's a burglar doing the rounds in the neighborhood, and everyone starts to think maybe he's that burglar, and organize a fucking lynch mob to try and kill him.
Well, you're missing a key element there, and that is Terry Jar as Julie. When he goes to her apartment, she starts drawing him, and then she also just happens to mention that she works at the Xerox store down below, and she feels so jaded that she has been making these essentially stop him posters and just going around the neighborhood, and that's what kind of flips Gail to go from "I'll drive you back in my ice cream truck" to "we're gonna kill you."
And this is all in one evening. So it's kind of like a video game in parts, like you kind of got to get past the one boss, you get to the next mini boss, and Catherine O'Hara is the last mini boss. I think the main boss is New York City.
You cannot escape from New York.
Did you think this was a funny movie? Did you find many laughs to be had here?
I didn't find it funny. This was definitely not a laugh out loud funny movie, and it was also not a mild titter of a laugh. It was like, yeah, it was just like, okay, yep, that's annoying, yep, awkward. It didn't make me actually laugh.
Yeah, an interesting factoid, and you can find in the trivia here, Tim Burton was the original choice to direct this film. Tim Burton's the second choice for the director after the producer saw Vincent in 1982. When Scorsese became available after production delays on The Last Temptation of Christ, Burton, according to Griffin Dunn, gracefully bowed out of the project, saying he didn't want to stand in the way of Scorsese. And little would you in 1985 if you were Tim fucking Burton, who hadn't really done anything yet. But
Yeah.
what an interesting thing this would have been to have seen Tim Burton direct this.
Yeah. Again, I kind of feel like his screwball, oddball character decisions would have kind of brought a bit more of the brevity to it that this was missing for more marketability, I guess. Like every single person that we are introduced to starts off as, okay, they're a little unusual, but okay. And then they flip just on a dime. And it's just kind of like, whoa. But Tim Burton, he populates every single one of his worlds with weird, kooky people. So
he does weird and kooky well. It was probably a bit early to cast Johnny Depp, but he could have tried. It's interesting. This film might have played better as a horror film in some ways, or a darker, scarier film.
Yeah, almost like a thriller.
Like, I don't know if you've ever played any of the Dead Rising games or zombie games, but the first couple were set in malls, which were good fun. And the mini bosses are all wacky people who work in the mall who've gone crazy. They're called psychopaths. Like, they work in stores, and it's a bit like this here. These are almost like psychopaths in this city who've gone kind of nuts. You kind of got to get past.
Yeah.
And New York was a very different place in the 1980s. That is, I went in the 2000s when it had been cleaned up, and you could walk around. And the only scary thing that happened to me was a homeless guy saw me wearing a Batman T-shirt and kept asking me if I was the real Batman, which of course I'm not.
I mean, come on, that's a stupid question. I mean, you can't answer that kind of question honestly. Either way, because one way people think, oh, you're lying, or the other way they'll think, oh, you're lying.
Pretty much, and maybe he was the real Batman. That was to sort of deflect attention. But the 80s was a lot scary. I remember growing up, and New York seemed like a really menacing place. It was full of crime and sleaziness, and Times Square was full of porno theaters and stuff like that. And you're gonna get shot for your shoe. That scene in Last Action Hero where they shoot the guy and you take your shoes. That was like, I always figured that's what New York was like.
Yeah.
And maybe it was in the 80s. So
I mean, there's a reason why Escape from New York was set in New York, because it's like, all right, you know what? Shit's got bad in New York. We can see them just kind of going, yeah, we're done with it. Let's just turn it into a prison colony.
So maybe in that sense, I found myself thinking, it's just a little bit scary about what's happening to him. Like, people trying to kill him, right? It's kind of dark in parts. And what happens, I think we can give spoilers for a 40-year-old film. He's saved when an old lady he meets in a nightclub covers him in paper mache, pretends he's a sculpture.
Yeah.
And actually covers his face and his mouth, and he's basically trapped in his paper mache. I'm like, this is some fucking Saw shit here, like, and like, if you wanted to turn this into a thriller, that's a pretty fucking dark way to end the film, right?
Yeah.
Just move him into the back of a room, and there's a whole bunch of them down there, right? Different.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, the end of the film is that this is fine. He ends up back at work. But I didn't find it funny either. I don't know whether humor was supposed to be in this. Of like, I guess it was situational. Like, oh, what a wacky hijinks he's up to. This shit just keeps happening to him. But
I guess part of it, or maybe the missing element was maybe that moment of relatability. Like, we didn't get a chance to really see him at work, and then the movie is all called After Hours, and it could have been like the fact that everyone starts nice and flips. It's almost like they're different personas from work to away. And if that was kind of the gag that they were trying to go for, you didn't get enough of professional Paul beforehand, because he seems somewhat lackadaisical and uninterested in his job, and generally he seems lackadaisical and uninterested in everything except the fact that it's fucking up his night. So I kind of imagine that who he was training maybe should have been in the sort of like the Mohawk Night
Yeah,
bars.
that would have made sense. Yeah, it's a good call.
Okay, I get it. That is funny. The masks that we wear during the day, and then after hours, the monsters come out, so to speak. Whatever. But that didn't happen.
No, that kind of Bronson Pinchot was in one scene and he's gone. What a waste of a fine actor. This is, as I said, I just keep coming back to going. It's a very odd film. The other thing that occurred to me watching it was I've seen. I think Griffin Dunn. I think of two things. I think of I Love Dick, the Kevin Bacon TV show from a few years ago, which is also profoundly weird. If you're interested, it's around the place. I think it might be on Stan in Australia.
Okay.
I don't know that I'd recommend it, but it's deeply strange and has some interesting ideas about female sexuality in there. Not something that's explored in After Hours. But the other film I go, Griffin Dunn, I think Who's That Girl? The 1987 Madonna film. If you're a very keen listener of the show, I was subjected to this film last year and did talk about how it's okay as Madonna films go. But Griffin Dunn is the romantic lead in that film. It's a very, very similar film to this film. The only difference is instead of meeting Rosanna Arquette and her, things happening from there, he meets Madonna, and she's kind of the catalyst that causes all this wacky chaos. But the difference is that that film sort of got the wackiness turned up to 11. Instead of, it's not the dark wacky, it's just wacky.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I look at that and go, how weird. And it's 2 years after this, he did that film. That 2 years after working with Martin Scorsese, one of the greatest directors in the world, on a kind of a wacky hijinks black comedy, he ends up doing very, very similar film with Madonna. I would not be surprised if this job got him that job. But that's my knowledge of Griffin Dunn expended just about. I'm kind of glad I got to watch this, though. It's a weird little nugget in a stellar career. I'm not sure I like it as much as a lot of the reviewers. This got a 90 Metascore. Roger Ebert listed as one of the great films of the 80s. I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't know either. I mean, it's amazing how much talent is peppered throughout this whole thing. But as a standalone movie, it's like, okay, kind of like Tar last week. I don't think I can recommend this to anyone beyond it's an experiment and something that is going to test your metal, because I don't know quite who I would recommend this to. I can't think of any associates, friends, relatives, anyone that I just go, oh, you know what? They'd probably enjoy experiencing this.
It's a cinematic curiosity.
Yeah.
It's something, if you want to complete the pack, if you want to complete all of Scorsese, you're really into Scorsese, you're a film student and you want to understand everything about how he ticks and what he's done, and you want to see this to complete the set. It's not the worst thing he's ever done. I'd say it's better than some of the stuff he did in the 90s, like Bring Out Your Dead and that kind of thing. But if nothing else, it's how often do you see him do black comedy? But you're right. You wouldn't be like in a break room at work going, what? I saw a really great film that everyone's going to enjoy. And if I can just have a little bit of a bitch at YouTube for a minute, I rented this film on YouTube to watch it. How annoying is it when you pay to rent a film and they don't have subtitles? Now, obviously, it's in English, so don't worry about that. If you're playing, oh, this sounds intriguing, I want to see it. It's just that, like, so many films these days have a badly mixed, and like you have a very soft dialogue and the very loud explosions and music, and also maybe someone like I might have had Michelle sleeping in a room. I don't want to have the volume up loud enough so I can hear it. I want to have subtitles on so I can understand what's going on. No subtitles on YouTube, even though you got to pay $5 for it. So fuck you, YouTube. It's another good reason to steal it.
Yeah.
That's after hours for me. Is there anything
Yes.
else you'd like to say about it?
No, except reveal what the next link in the
You
chain
have
and
the
who the
key,
chain
sir.
is. The link this time, as I pointed out last week, we haven't really delved too deeply into comedies in our chain movies. This was supposed to be a comedy of some description, but we are going to a certified comedy movie. Now, we are following Catherine O'Hara to one of the best regarded comedies, Best in Show.
Oh, it's a classic.
It's a 2000 movie, a behind-the-scenes look into the highly competitive, cutthroat world of dog shows through the eyes of a group of ruthless dog owners. This is one of the movies by the same general collection of people that brought us such gems as This Is Spinal Tap. We have got Fred Willard, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Jennifer Coolidge. We've got a young Parker Posey in there. We've got Michael Hitchcock. We've got
Will Sasso, Bob
yeah,
Babylon, Christopher
there is
Guest, Michael McKean,
so much,
Eugene
so much
Levy.
talent.
It's a veritable smorgasbord of improv. Most of this film is improv, by the way.
Yes.
I've seen this film, and most of these, the way these guys work, you get a one pager, and this is what's happening in this scene. Go in and do it.
Yeah.
And if I could just say for a moment, Jennifer Coolidge is having an absolute moment right now. Big star of White Lotus. White Lotus, season 2. And I think she's kind of almost the breakout star for that season. And a film we won't be talking about tonight, but maybe we will in the not too distant future if I really don't like George, is Shotgun Wedding, which is available on Prime now, starring Jennifer Lopez and Josh Duhamel. And she is the best thing about that movie as well. So Jennifer Coolidge having an absolute red hot couple of years. Good choice. It's a great film. I am looking forward to seeing it again, and so many wonderful, wonderful waves out of that film, including The Princess Bride, of course. Which I won't be doing because we've all seen that a million times, but
exactly. Exactly. But for those who want to play along at home, you can rent this on pretty much all the standard places. You've got Apple, Amazon, and YouTube. But that is a little bit of a treat because, we've been doing a lot of movies that we haven't seen before. But this one, I wanted to just really, really tick that comedy box with a certified success.
I think I saw this film probably when it came out 23 years ago. And I'm pretty sure it might have been one of, if not the first film I ever watched on a computer. I think one of my friends had one of those AOL. I don't know if you had them in the UK. AOL tried to penetrate the Australian market, and they were giving out like fucking candy, CDs with 500 free hours. Back when you used to pay for the internet by hour, people. Back in my day, you get 500 hours of. We had a stack of them this high on our desk.
So in honor of that, maybe we'll have pixelated versions of ourselves next week.
Very good. I wish we knew how to do that. That would be so good. But moving on, shall we move on to your suggestion this week? Something a little bit classier. Well, it is Scorsese, but something a little bit more current, and that would be the Academy Award nominated Guillermo Del Toro's Pinocchio. What a weird thing. It's actually titled that by IMDb. It's not titled Pinocchio. Its official title is Guillermo Del Toro's Pinocchio. I guess to separate it from the horrible Disney one that came out this year.
Yes, I think it's partly that, and also because of legal rights.
Right. Isn't it licensed in the public domain?
But yes, this is Guillermo Del Toro doing a feature film, stop motion animation. And he flirted with this idea delightfully in the early opening credit sequences, telling the story of the elves in Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. And it was kind of puppetry work, so like shadow puppets and things like that, with a little bit of stop motion in there as well, I think. And it was just beautiful the way they did it. And then for years, people were talking about, oh, he's working on Pinocchio. Okay, I'm curious about this because he is someone who will happily delve deep back into the deepest, most original version of a story to pull out the most grotesque, most depraved, disgusting ending that you can possibly think. It would be like the difference between Hans Christian Andersen's version of any of the fairy tales that he had, where they were grim fairy tales, compared to the Disney ones. He always goes for the grim, and he does it in such a delightful way. And this is a telling of it that you haven't really experienced before, because one, for the setting, the fact that it is during wartime, and how that informs the creation of Pinocchio, shall we say. This movie is beautiful, technologically just an absolute masterpiece. The stop motion
spectacular, looks spectacular. You forget you're watching puppets.
Yeah, and the guys at, I think it was Leikai that did the stop motion work here. Same people that did Coraline and those sorts of films. This is genuine mastercraft. And it's an interesting cast of voices as well. We've got Ewan McGregor as Cricket. We've got David Bradley as Geppetto, Gregory Mann as Pinocchio, Bern Gorman as the priest. Obviously, it's Guillermo Del Toro, so you've got Ron Perlman in there, John Turturro, Finn Wolfhard, Kate Blanchett, Tim Blake Nelson, Christoph Waltz, Tilda Swinton. Whew, that's quite a stacked card right there, ladies and gentlemen.
To be noted, though, I don't think Tilda Swinton, Kate Blanchett actually has any actual lines.
Yeah.
I think it's just grunts. She plays a monkey.
Yeah.
I don't think she says anything. So she's a soon-to-be Triple Academy Award winner, in my opinion. And she's playing a monkey. So she really wanted to be in this film. She really wanted to work with Del Toro. It is the longest stop-motion animation film ever made, apparently, at 1 hour, 57 minutes. I will agree with you on the technical side. The first 20 minutes of this is just stunningly good. It's got a unique look, which all of Del Toro's work does. The stop motion is as good as I've ever seen, in terms of, he's obviously gone for a more realistic look. Some people who do stop motion don't really seem to mind, but you can tell. I think of Isle of Dogs, which didn't really seem to mind, but they were a bit jerky. That almost seemed to be built into the style of the film.
Yeah, it almost made it kind of look a bit handmade.
Yeah, and I love that. That's fine. I mean, I grew up with this, Jason and the Argonauts and that kind of thing, right? I forget the guy of a name. Ray Harryhausen is famous for his stop motion work, and it coming back is great. It's come back into fashion. And you forget you're watching puppets. What they get these puppets to do and the way they move is unbelievable. So from a technical standpoint, I know this has been nominated for Best Animated Feature, I think, at the Oscars. If you were awarding that purely on technical specs, I think it would be a lock. In terms of a film to sit down and watch, I did not enjoy this very much at all.
I agree with you, purely because of the way that Pinocchio is presented. And he is so annoying. And yeah, I get it. It is. I was talking to a friend of the show, Patrick, about this, and he had the same hurdle of, it's really frustrating. He's got a grating voice, for one thing, and he's a newborn, essentially, just kind of going, oh, what's this? And everything is exciting and new, but that's really fucking frustrating to watch for 1.5 hours.
There's not that. It's 2. Oh, I guess he's in the film for 1.5 hours. You're right.
Yeah.
The whole film's 2 hours. I, of course, found him annoying because he's a young child. Young children are annoying. What I struggle with very much in this film was, it's a family film. Even the tags on the film in IMDb, animation drama family. It has a PG rating. here in Australia, or an M rating, I think, here in Australia, which is virtually the same. I think it's PG over in the States. So this is a film that's made to be seen by children, which is fine. I mean, the Pinocchio, famously the Disney Pinocchio film, this is a fairy tale. You're probably not going to make it unless you're probably not going to get the kind of money it takes to make this film and make it a horror film, which would be interesting. So this is me made with
Winnie the Pooh. They're going to do it with all of them.
I can't wait to see that. That's going to be so weird. But this is, but on the one hand, so it's made for children, but there's some really dark themes and scary shit in it, like the wood sprite / death. I mean, played by Tilda Swinton's pretty full on and kind of spooky looking if you're a young child, maybe.
Yeah.
Also reminded me very much of a character from Borderlands rather than like a wood sprite. I don't know if you ever played any of the Borderlands games. It kind of reminded me of the some of the characters in Borderlands 2, actually. There's an alien character that's weird looking.
Also, that movie's coming out later this year, apparently.
It's been delayed, but yes, I'm very curious to see what that looks like, because that's going to be a complete shit show. I'm calling it now. Speaking, Kate Blanchett's in that.
Yep. And Jack Black.
So weird. Pinocchio dies multiple times. He's shot in the head at one point. It's got Mussolini and fascists in it, which in one side is an interesting angle.
Yes.
But I don't think they really fully take advantage of it. And at another point, John Turturro's character, De Toro, puts a gun in his son's hand and tells him to shoot his best friend in the head. Like, there's some shit in here that is pretty full on for kids. Now, it got past the rating board, and whatever. You can make that choice if you have kids, or parents can make that choice. But for me, it's like, okay, what kind of film is he making here? Because if I'm watching a kids film, it's not a pure kids film. I mean, I guess from that perspective is why I found it quite so dull, is because it's been made for children. I felt like I was watching a children's film. Then there'll be these things that splash up, and you'll be like, what the fuck? You can't do that in a kids film.
Yeah, I absolutely see that.
Way too long. Too long. I did a half an hour cut out of it. 20 minutes, half an hour. I know I'm back on my bandwagon on that one. I always say that. But it needed 20. I don't know if a kid is going to pay attention for 2 hours. They can barely pay attention to a 30-second TikTok. A 2-hour stop motion Pinocchio film, I don't know if that kid's got it in it. I think he's just kind of landed in this weird no man's land. It's not a kid's film. It's not an adult's film. It's too long for kids. It's too long and for adults and not interesting enough. But I don't think he's quite nailed what this food is for, and hence it's kind of not quite right.
Yeah. It doesn't. This movie definitely is Guillermo Del Toro through and through, unlike After Hours, where it didn't really feel too much like a Scorsese movie. This feels like a Del Toro movie, but it seems like the normal focus that he has of Nightmare Alley, his last feature film with Bradley Cooper, and Cate Blanchett, I think.
It was, yes.
Film. Yeah, a fantastic film. And it had this beautiful wave that ran through it, and it just kept on twisting and twisting and twisting until the very end, where it's just Bradley Cooper laughing and at the almost in a darker version of After Hours almost. It had its theme, it had its target in mind, and it stuck to it. This, it does drift, but partly because of the music in it, and because of just how childish they especially start Pinocchio off at. It makes it really hard. And the visuals of it, while they are phenomenal and they are incredibly technologically impressive, again, it doesn't quite sit with it, with the tone of and the pace that the story is being told. And then on top of that, you've got these, like you said, these moments where it's, almost like a punch coming in and you flinch, but then the punch stops 6 foot away from your face. It's like, oh, there, huh? Wait, what was the point of that? Oh, we're moving on. Oh, okay.
And if that punch had been able to connect, that would have been something.
Yeah.
But it's not. So it's sort of like, it's neither here nor there. So you're like, you went to all the trouble of swinging your arm, stopping it an inch from my face. So why do that? Now, obviously, in real life, I prefer people not to punch me, just as an FYI.
Yes, but it's in a movie, in a Del Toro movie, which even in the trailers, it kind of, you got that sense of darkness to it. And I feel like they should have embraced that to, like, this is kind of, people talk about Labyrinth, The Dark Crystal, Krull, those dark fantasy movies from the 80s that were really fucking dark when you kind of think about them. This had the possibility of just kind of rekindling that and doing that in the modern age of cinema. But it didn't. And it is to its detriment. If they had just gone, you know what? No. This is a Pinocchio story, and you're automatically going to think, oh, I'll take my kid to that. But fair warning, your kid's going to be fucking scared. And so
you're going to fuck your kid up for life. But, that's good.
Yeah. It's like, this movie should have been this generation's Watership Down. That's what it should have been. It's like, oh, buddies. No.
It's too soon out of triggered now. I think we did talk about the Watership Down in the old G&T podcast about 10 years ago now. I don't think I've got over that yet.
No one has, and no one ever will.
There's that, and the horse is drowning in fucking never-ending story. Artax, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Artax in the swamps of sadness.
And you're like, there's some dark fucking movies. The bad guy in it was the nothing. Anyway, I'm with you on that one. I just think it needed to be one thing or the other, and it needed to be shorter. It needed to be more entertaining, and you made an excellent point there. The songs, oh my god, I fucking hated the songs. They were horrible. And people who are long-term listeners and viewers will realize that I'm not a fan of musicals, despite popular opinion to the contrary. But I always hated when I was a kid, and you expected every Disney film ever, they all broke out in song all the time. I'm like, I don't need the songs. Quite happy with the story, thank you very much. But that hasn't changed, and I found them intolerably annoying, the songs here. So I'm sorry, Del Toro fans. I'm sure if you're a really big fan, you'll find something to enjoy here. As George noted, the technical side of it is gorgeous. It's really stunning animation, and what they do with them, the puppets and the animation, is breathtakingly good. But unfortunately, it's in service of a fairly dull story.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agree. Which breaks my heart, because I love Del Toro's stuff. I've loved every one of his movies, and he is overall working at the top of his game at the moment. But this, I don't know whether it was his choice or if it was Netflix kind of saying, we're a family platform. I don't know, but something just didn't land right, and that's disappointing.
It didn't seem like Netflix. They should leave filmmakers like Del Toro alone to do whatever it is they want to do. And I've been talking recently about Disney, how I'm like, fucking shit they have at Disney right now. You're like, if Disney can do it, I'd be very surprised if Netflix are cutting out the legs from under Del Toro. But yeah, who knows what it was, but it didn't. I think maybe it's yet another example of someone who's at the top of their game. Christopher Nolan, etc. Matt Reeves and the Batman, like someone needs to come along and go, does Batman really need to be 3 hours long? Do we need to hear...
How many times do we need that Nirvana song?
Something in the way, the sixth time this movie, do you know it's been 6 times now? Like, did you cut 20 minutes out of it somewhere? I mean, maybe, like Nolan, could someone please hear the dialogue? People like dialogue. Your dialogue's very good, Chris. Someone should be able to hear it. Maybe someone needs to come along and tap Del Toro in the shoulder and go, mate, either punch the people in the face or leave them alone.
Yeah.
Don't
Which
you
movie
know?
are you making here? Because you got two dueling things right now, and they're both losing.
Maybe it's just that he doesn't have that, but who knows?
Maybe. I will be that person for you.
We're
I
happy. We're
will
happy
do
to
it.
watch it.
I will do
We're
it.
happy to watch your films ahead of time and just go, nah, mate. Speaking of nah, mate, should we move on?
Yeah, let's go on to and yet another. Last week we had Tar. This week we've got Banshees of Inisherin as Oscar nominated darlings.
We do try to get this time of year. It's a good time of year to do this kind of thing. It's in the news. Generally speaking, these kind of films are of a higher quality. At least the Academy thinks so. So interestingly, I don't know if you noticed that
You've
Anna
been
de
good.
Armas
Yeah.
has been nominated for a Razzie and an Oscar this year. So that's fascinating. Not for this film. This film has been nominated for 9 Academy Awards, which is a lot.
Nice.
Best Actress, Best Actor, Best Music Written for a Film, Best Motion Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor twice, and Best Original Screenplay, and Best Film Editing. I don't think it's going to win many of those. It might win a technical award somewhere, maybe editing or something, but it's not winning any of the performance awards. This is directed by Martin McDonagh, who directed In Bruges. I don't know if you ever
Which
saw
also
that one.
has Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson.
Which is very good. He wrote Seven Psychopaths. He wrote 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and directed both of those films as well. I was just checking that. I liked 3 Billboards. I thought that was pretty good. 2 lifelong friends find themselves at an impasse when one abruptly ends their relationship with alarming consequences for them both. Colin Farrell stars as Patrick. I'm going to say Patrick because it's like I'm not Irish. Pedrick. Brendan Gleeson plays Colm. Kerry Condon, who's best nominated for Best Actor, plays Siobhan. And Barry Keoghan, who's been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, plays Dominic. So all 4 of its leads have been nominated for acting awards. So good on them for that. And Patrick, Colin Farrell. He's friends with Brendan Gleeson.
Yes.
And at the start of the film, he goes to his house to see if he's invited to the pub because they go to the pub the same time every day. But today, Brendan Gleeson just ignores him. And he finds out later that he doesn't. Brendan Gleeson says to him, I don't want to be your friend anymore. You're dull.
Yeah.
And that sort of kicks off the wacky, loony shit that this film's about. This film is, according to IMDb, a comedy drama. And as I keep saying to people, when I look at the Metacritic reviews, the top review by Robbie Collin from The Telegraph in the UK, this is an often shoulder-shudderingly funny film. Whose comic dialogue is dazzlingly designed and performed, but McDonagh leaves fate itself for the last black bone-rattling laugh. We watched a funny comedy before. I don't think I laughed once at this film. How did you go?
I'm just going to share something on the screen right now, and it's the definition of comedy. Professional entertainment consisting of jokes, sketches intended to make an audience laugh, or a play characterized by its humorous or satirical tone and its depiction of amusing people or incidents, in which case the characters ultimately triumph over adversity. That is a prime example of Shakespearean comedies right there. I did not laugh once in this movie. I did not let out a little tittle. I did not go, nothing. This is a drama with an attempt at making pathetic / sadness funny.
Maybe it's an Irish thing. I did talk to someone who had Irish heritage, and we sort of started explaining the plot to them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's funny." And I'm like, "Okay, maybe." So I have a feeling if you're Irish or have Irish heritage, recent Irish heritage, you might find this more to your liking. It is set on the island of Inisherin, which I don't believe is a real place. I guess I quickly Google that. I don't believe it is. But wherever it was shot was gorgeous, just a stunningly photographed film. And maybe not for you, I suspect, because a lot of it, I guess, countryside and landscapes and stuff are probably very familiar to you from your childhood and your younger years.
Pretty much.
The fences and stuff, all with the stone fences and the
Mm-hmm.
the verdant fields and the sheep and stuff, and you're like, oh, just stunning. But you're like, it probably looks. Maybe I figure people from the UK maybe just going, it looks fucking cold, and people from Ireland going, yeah, it looks fucking cold. But at the same, so we meet these characters. Colm has decided he wants to focus on his art, his music. He's decided he's got very little time left, not so much time left, not very little, but not a whole lot of time left in his life to spend doing something. And he thinks he'd be better off doing it, trying to practice his music, which is the fiddle. And that gives him a chance, something to be remembered for, as opposed to, as he says, basically talking shit with someone who's dull. Padre, Colin Farrell, does not get this. He complains vociferously to his sister, Siobhan, who is a librarian, I think, teacher. And everybody in the island sort of is a gossip and starts getting involved and trying to figure out what's going on and trying to change Brendan Gleeson's mind. At the same time, we have a backdrop of the Irish Civil War, which people on the island can see taking place on the distant mainland. And I think this is maybe supposed to be a parable for, those sort of ongoing troubles that Ireland has had over the last couple of 100 years. And let's face it, it's the fucking English who did it, but they were responsible for it. But, yeah, not to say it's an Irish problem per se, it's a problem imposed on them by,
but the English have a lot to apologize for. Let's just move on.
Let's just put that on the list. Next, we'll be talking about the Elgin Marbles. But I think maybe it's supposed to be, like brother versus brother, the Irish Civil War. We've got these two guys fighting a battle that neither of them really seem to quite understand.
Maybe. I mean, it's because there was talk in the movie of sort of like the executions and how the cop just wanted to see an execution, didn't fucking care who it was on what side or anything like that, and he just wants to see kind of other people get hurt rather than himself. And maybe it is supposed to be a parable for that of Colm is just saying, let me do my own thing, stop trying to fuck with me. I will cut off a finger every time you talk to me.
That is a thing that happens in this film.
Yes.
He's not making that up.
Yes. That is the escalation point. And Pedrick just keeps on wanting to understand why. I'm a nice person. Why? And just pushing and just being unstoppable force, immovable object. If you want to go to the Dark Knight, it just causes that frustration on both sides. It's like to the point where it gets out of hand. But out of hand.
But I'm here a week.
Yeah, but it's not funny.
It's really not funny. I don't like it. I suppose someone cutting their fingers off and throwing it at someone's house could be considered funny in certain corners or what. I mean, maybe there are certain circumstances where that could be a laugh. I can't think of too much of amputation-based comedy, but I'm sure it's out there. But it's it's a subgenre. You wouldn't have heard of it. I found myself going, this is horrific. It's horrible.
He never bandages it either. He just lets it bleed everywhere.
And he's playing blood splattering, playing the fiddle, and he's blood splattering everywhere. And we haven't even talked about Barry Keoghan's character of Dominic, who is the policeman, the local policeman's son, who is being physically and sexually abused by his father to the point where you should probably put the spoiler thing up because we've already given away the thing about the hand.
Yeah.
If you want to know more, if you want to save this film, you should probably stop now and go away. But to the point where Dominic kills himself by drowning himself in the lake after basically expressing his love for Siobhan, who basically very gently puts him down and says, "Oh, honey, that's never happening." But he's obviously developmentally challenged, and you can understand why, at the hands of the abuse, he cops at his father, and that's funny. Apparently, that's funny. I mean, no, I'm not saying that they played his abuse for laughs, and they didn't do that, but is he supposed to be a comic relief?
Well, that I don't understand, and the kind of ongoing element of the donkey as well, and there's just elements to it that it's sort of like, wait, is this like an in-joke for all Irish settlements where there's always that lovely guy, a bit boring, a bit dull, but he always has his donkey with him or whatever, and just his whole world revolves around donkey. I've not heard of that.
The closest to the funniest line in the film is the one in the trailer goes, "I'm not making my donkey sit outside while I'm sad." Drake's best friend, essentially, apart from his sister, Siobhan, is his donkey. Jenny. This is Jenny. It's a very different Jenny to the one from Forrest Gump. Okay, this one's got more character.
I love you, Jenny.
I may not be a smart man, but I know what love is. And what happens to Jenny at the end is horrific. That moment where the donkey chokes on Colm's fingers and dies is horrible.
That's uproariously funny, Travis.
I love that with Artax.
Yes. And then you see him just sitting in the room with the dead donkey. He's just there quietly. It's like, what? How's this funny? I'm sorry.
I don't want to leave the impression this is a bad film. It's not. I didn't really enjoy it. I think it's fair to say I was quite bored by the end because I was sent in expecting a comedy. I was expecting some, even if it's not like an uproarious, laugh out loud film, as you sort of said, a titter or a, that's funny, like a smarmy, smirky kind of comedy, or probably more something like in Bruges, which was funny, but not laugh out loud. It was quirky funny, and because there are no laughs in this, as far as I'm concerned, that's just left you with a fucking depressing mood of the whole thing. The drama is really dark and really depressing. And without that comedy in there to lighten it up and move the story along in a way that makes you feel good, it's a bit of work for me.
I mean, I understand certain elements of it, like every time Pedro goes into the pub and it's like, "Oh, are you two fighting? I don't know. I don't think we're fighting. It looks like you're fighting. Yeah, it does look like we're fighting." That kind of back and forth, no one's sure what's happening, and you keep on having the same conversation. I get that, but it's not actually funny. It's just like, "Oh yeah, okay. I know people like that." That's not a joke. That's not, and even if you do, you kind of go, "All right, you know what? Fine. This isn't a comedy. This is a melodrama. This is Lars von Trier level melodrama. This is really fucking sad. Someone is so determined to not talk to a dull person that he cuts his fucking fingers off."
It seems something of an overreaction. Again, and that's what made me think, is this supposed to be like a parable for the Civil War? You do this, I do that, you talk to me, I cut my fingers off, it's sort of the constant escalation of, no one quite wins, everyone loses. But in the end, it's much too, I'm going to say it again, it's too long. If you're not making me laugh, then I don't think an hour 54 is really the right length for this film. Now, we should note, you and I are deeply in the minority on this one. It's got a 7.89 dB. It's got an 87 Metascore, 9 Oscar nominations. I watched it with Michelle, who also didn't find it funny. And just because people do realize I'm very, very picky about comedy. So, in case you're thinking, don't listen to that guy.
There was another funny line in it. And it was Colm in the confessional where he says, if punching a policeman is a sin, then we may as well pack up and go home.
It's just wisdom there. It's so I guess take our word with a grain of salt. Michelle quite liked it, even without thinking it was actually funny. So maybe if you go in to see this film, adjust your expectations. Expect more of a dark, depressing melodrama than anything more like we said in Bruges or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Now, should we move on and have quickfire binge browse burn?
Sure. We've renamed it Burn because apparently people overseas had some thoughts about bone. It means something else in some other parts of the world. So,
yeah.
You can't excuse, it's probably the Americans. What have you got this week?
Well, I think we're both going to talk about one that is binge worthy, and that is the new Rian Johnson TV show, Poker Face. On Stan over here, I believe it is on Peacock in the US. This has got one of your girls, Natasha Lyonne, as the main star. It also has Benjamin Bratt in it, and the first episode has got Adrian Brody in it.
It's the bad guy.
Yes.
First episode was written and directed by Rian Johnson.
And straight up, because of this show, I would love Rian Johnson to do a revitalized. This is essentially Rian Johnson just kind of going, you know what? I've got this cool idea for a character, and basically, I'm going to do Columbo. That's what Natasha is essentially as Charlie Cale. She is someone who has just got this innate ability to know when someone is lying to her, and she's got a good heart. She is referred to as Lady Galahad in the first episode at one point, and this is fucking awesome.
I like it a lot. I think a lot of this rests on Natasha Lyonne's charisma, particularly the first episode. I felt like that what really carried that over the line for me was the fact that Natasha Lyonne she's actually one of my favorite actors. I really, really enjoyed Russian Doll, which she was in. And I've been a fan since way back. She was in a movie about 20 years ago called But I'm a Cheerleader, which is criminally overlooked. But she's incredibly charismatic and fun to watch. And then you had Adrian Brody, who's sleazy and oily as the bad guy, as the casino boss in the first episode. And I thought those two worked brilliantly together. And the jumping forwards and jumping backwards, I thought that was done pretty nicely. I thought it just got better in the second episode. And that one was directed by Rian Johnson as well. Different writer. But it all hangs on Natasha Lyonne being fun to watch. And he totally wrote this character for her, right?
Oh,
this is so written for it's perfectly written for Natasha Lyonne. So she's the perfect actor for a perfect role. And without her, this doesn't work, I don't think. And so I'm so glad that she's getting some really great parts again, because she's a deeply weird person. And I like that about her. I would encourage everybody to, if you're interested, go and look up an interview on YouTube between Jay Leno and Natasha Lyonne. It's from like the late 90s. It's one of the weirdest fucking things I've ever seen. And it's deeply disturbing on a number of levels. Not only because Jay Leno is totally cracking onto her. And you're like, ew. She's like really young. Anyway, I'm enjoying this very much as well. And how far along are you? Have you seen them all?
I've only seen the first two episodes.
I've only seen the first two as well. And I think They really hold together very nicely. So this is
Mhm.
serious binge territory for me.
Yeah. It is essentially a mystery of the week kind of thing, but there is the continuous thread going through, which just nicely keeps her on her toes, as well as giving her the opportunity and giving the writers an opportunity to just go, okay, let's shake it up. Let's do doing something new this week and this week and this week. It's a little bit. There's just a tiny little touch of Bruce Banner's The Incredible Hulk.
You're right. This is the kind of show you used to see a lot back in the day. Remember, even in the 90s, remember X-Files was like, you had the overarching arc of the alien shit, but every other week there'd be a monster of a week or something like that, and the story wouldn't necessarily be connected to the broader series arc. And we've gone away from that. And I'm enjoying learning about a whole bunch of new people every week, and it's fantastic. I'll agree with you.
Absolutely. Have you got a browse?
I have, unfortunately, I'm sorry, all my three have been suggestions this week.
Okay.
And that is, second one I'm going to talk about is Shrinking.
Oh, now this is the Harrison Ford one?
The new series on Apple TV. Apple are killing it at the moment with their TV series after Severance last year. I think you talked about, was it Old Horses? The Gary Oldman show.
Yep.
The morning show. This is stars Jason Segel, Jessica Williams, Harrison Ford, and Ted McGinley is in this as well, for those who remember Married to Children. A grieving therapist starts to tell his clients exactly what he thinks. Ignoring his training and ethics, he finds himself making huge changes to people's lives, including his own. The creators of this show, Jason Segel, Bill Lawrence, and Brett Goldstein, the two men behind Ted Lasso, which I didn't mention, is also a huge hit for Apple as well. Sorry?
Bill Lawrence created Scrubs.
And Scrubs as well, if you go back quite a way. And Cougar Town as well, that was quite a big one back in the day. And of course, Brett Goldstein plays the grumpy, is it Roy? I can't think his character's name in Ted Lasso. Roy Kent, yes. And of course, he played Hercules now in the MCU in Thor Love and Thunder.
That's right. Yeah.
This show is sensational. There are 2 episodes out as of a moment. This is a short run. It's 10 episodes. Jason Segel is perfectly cast in this role. I haven't seen him in ages. I don't know what he's been doing, but it's great to see him back. But the real treat here is Harrison Ford. This is, again, a perfectly written role for a character. This has been written, I'm sure, strictly for Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford kind of plays the older mentor character. He runs the practice at which Jason Segel's character, what's his name, Jimmy, works at, and sort of plays a mentor role overseeing his work at the same time as being deeply concerned about the unethical things he's actually doing. It's just great to see Harrison doing something. You can tell when he likes what he's doing. When Harrison's phoning it in, it's terrible.
Exactly. That's it. You just look and you go, oh my God, he's actually put effort in.
He's putting some effort into this. You can really tell. And it's great to see Harrison back doing his best work. I was talking to Michelle about this, and we were watching an episode. He's got his shirt off and he's shaving. She goes, ew, I don't know about that shirt. And I'm like, come on. He's fucking Han Solo. He's Indiana Jones. He can do whatever the fuck he wants, all right? But if you've got Apple TV, you're in luck because this is an absolute cracker.
Okay, all right, nice. I've got a burn, and it is a controversial burn because it flies in the face of much reverse thought, shall we say, and that is Andor on Disney Plus.
I have heard this described as the best thing in Star Wars for a very long time.
Me too. And I tried watching the first episode, and it was boring. And I have tried to watch more. I am halfway through episode 3, and I have no interest whatsoever on going back. It's just fucking boring. And people keep on saying, oh, it gets really good by the end. It's like, I don't fucking care. These episodes are so long and arduous and slow. Take me to fucking Banshees again, please. At least there's a donkey. This show is so boring, and it puts on this air of everything being really big and grand and meaning a lot, and everyone's really considering it, and there's not always just dark side and light side, and everyone's got this thing, kind of the newsroom kind of attitude is like, oh, well, there's Republicans who are actually good people, there's Democrats who are assholes, painting to the edges and just going, you know what, these are whole people rather than just the stereotype. But they're fucking boring and slow, and people complained about Game of Thrones season 1 being slow. Oh, Doctor, this one, fuck me. So like, okay, so in the first episode, we've got Cassian Andor on the run because reasons, and he got involved with a killing of some dickheads that deserve to die. All right, okay. Oh wait, now he's what? Stellan Skarsgård's just turned up. He's doing things. I don't know who he is. I don't care. He's now being enlisted and he's doing a job. What's this job? It's a heist. It's a theft. It's what is it? I don't. Oh God. I don't.
Actually, probably a relevant question at this point in time is, where do you stand on Rogue One?
I don't like it.
As I remember seeing it in the cinema and going, it was pretty average, especially the first half hour, which was a complete mess. And then you can see Tony Gilroy, who is credited as the creator of this show, took over it after Gareth Edwards, and he got cleaner from there. But they still have that half hour at the start where it doesn't make any sense. So I never liked it, but I know it's really considered again.
This very much ties into Rogue One, and let's just get nice little. We're in a room of honesty and truth here, ladies and gentlemen. The people who like Rogue One only like it because of the end sequence where Darth Vader goes along and is trying to capture the stuff and it kills things and wrecks things like a boss. And it's a sequence that we've all imagined in our heads for thousands and thousands of years at this point in Star Wars universe. And we finally got to see it, and it wasn't actually disappointing like so many times when we do see things that we've been thinking about and just having all these fan moments about, and suddenly it's not as good as what we thought it was going to be. There we go. Back to normal. Rogue One is boring.
I didn't like Rogue One, so it sounds like maybe I don't even remember who he is because I haven't seen it since it came out. So maybe a couple of things if you want to get involved in this, like you're like us and you haven't yet. Maybe you were. I'm guessing to worth rewatching Rogue One to remind yourself who this guy is and why he's got his own show. And maybe set your expectations to low if, like us, you weren't a big fan of Rogue One.
Yeah, there's this. People are saying, between this and the Bad Batch and Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's like, no, really, just no. Please just give us a break. Disney, please give us a break and let us just not have new Star Wars content for a little while. And you're never going to give us a break on Marvel stuff. But just a break on something. I am stepping away from it because it's just too mediocrity being celebrated as gold class.
We're making a mockery of our quick fire challenge here.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I spoke really quickly to get my point across.
I need to be said though, like I'm very glad you watched it so I don't have to.
Yeah,
because I've been tempted because people have been saying how good it is and one of the shows of the year and stuff like that. Because I'm going to talk about one of the real shows of the year, and that is The Last of Us. And this is super deep, hardcore binge territory right now. We are 3 episodes in, and now I know you were a bit iffy about it because you didn't play the game, or if you did, you didn't actually like it as much as I didn't like the game very much either. I thought the gameplay was lame and the story was slow. But my God, 3 episodes in. I don't know. I putting it on the table now. This is episode 3 of The Last of Us is the best television we will see in 2023. Period. End of story. I cannot see how anybody is going to top what this show has already done. Okay. So I don't know if they still do it, but if Binge still offer one of those free 7-day trial periods, when this is finished, if you don't want to sign up before or obtain it via other means, it's worth burning your 7-day trial period for this show, assuming it continues on the path it is.
Okay.
This show is the best thing on television at the moment. You do not need to be a fan of a video game. I was not a fan. I played an hour or two. It made the first episode interesting because the first episode basically mimics a lot of what happens in the game. After a global pandemic destroys civilization, a hardened survivor takes charge of a 14-year-old girl who may be humanity's last hope. Pedro Pascal plays Joel, who is our main protagonist. We also have Bella Ramsey playing Ellie, who is the other main protagonist. The first episode involves Joel escaping his town in the midst of an outbreak. They aren't zombies. Apparently, they are infected, but they might as well be zombies. And the infection is not a virus; it's fungus, which is an interesting angle. But people have done side by sides of the game and the show, and it very closely resembles what happened in the game in terms of the action sequences. Episode 3, I'm not going to spoil for you or anybody else who hasn't had a chance to see it, but is brilliant. The very, very sad thing is you check the audience ratings of the episodes so far, 9.2, 9.3, and the most recent episode is 8. So
those Russian judges are harsh.
It's just fanboys who don't understand how scripted television works. Who've watched it's fucking brilliant. Anyway, it's been accused of being filler, but I cannot tell you how wonderful last night's episode was. So if you're not a fan of horror, it's not too bad, though. They are a bit scary looking, I guess, but that's monsters. The relationship between Joel and Ellie is just building beautifully, and I already know what happens in the end because people have been talking about this game for years now, and there's a sequel. But wow, we might finally have it. The thing that I've been waiting for since we started the show.
Don't say it. You're cursing the show. You're
cursing the wall. This show might breach the damn wall. In a sense that this is rating its tits off, as far as I understand it. Everybody's really it's the talk of the town, so to speak. It's the talk of anybody who's watching television at the moment is talking about The Last of Us. It even like this week's episode made news in places it doesn't normally make news in. Like the ABC was sending me news alerts about it and stuff like that. You're like the ABC being the Australian version, not the American version. This could be the one that actually makes all the difference and turns those video game properties into the goal that you and I both, and everybody who plays games know they are. The difference being they're treating this one with respect and like a cherished source material, to be respected and understood and and actually treated properly, and characters in the story there. You don't need to rewrite the story. The story's already there. It's fucking amazing. You don't need a new story. For the first time, someone seems to have figured that out. Apart from the silly ones like Pikachu and Angry Birds, which have no story.
Anyway, but therein lies the genius. You can't fuck it up if there's no story.
You can't fuck up. Well, I mean, there are some of fanboys out there going, it didn't happen like that in the game. You're like, well, fuck off and play the game then. It's still there for you. But, you do have to make some changes for television and for filming. Like, you can't have everything exactly like the game. But it had plenty of game moments and fan service in there. But from what I understand, what they've changed is more to make it more cinematic, but also the actual people who write this are the people behind the actual game. So the people that created the game are the people who are writing the show, and they've had some new thoughts about things they could have done better in the story, and they're inserting it into the show, which I think is a wonderful innovation here. So finally, after 10 years, I could be finally right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Travis, unless you've got anything else you want to particularly
Nope, I am
contribute on,
good.
we can get in under an hour 30.
It's an achievement for us.
We've done it. We've done it.
We've cracked the code. And that was us being a little bit frivolous with our quickfire review. So thank you. So you can send your checks, care of the show. We'll accept your congratulations for finally doing it.
And for our next miracle. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, whether live or later on as a podcast on all podcast services. Don't forget, you can always reach out, and if you've got a recommendation for a movie, new or old, or a TV show, new or old, that you think that we should experience and try out and review, let us know. You can reach out at The Fried Brain, at Evil Trav on the Twitters, Facebook.com/Armchair Producers, YouTube.com/Armchair Producers, and Twitch.tv/The Fried Brain. You can reach us there anywhere. We talked about Martin Scorsese's After Hours. I have chosen Catherine O'Hara to be our link to next week's Best in Show. We talked about The Banshees of Inisherin and Pinocchio on Netflix, both of those being Oscar-nominated movies. We had our binge, browse, and burn session with 2 binges and a burn. Kind of hard to get the browsers when so many things are just being dumped all season, all the time. But I rather like that little segment, actually.
I mean, so it gets a lot in very quickly because, TV was so much of it out there,
Yeah.
But, you're right. I think some weeks you can have more binges and stuff like that. I think it's kind of a hot season for this kind of thing, but there'll be shit later in a year where you'll be just like, burn it all.
Yep. And I don't know about you, but I am kind of keeping an ear out for ones I want to burn. Just so it's fun to burn. It's fun to watch the world burn, ladies and gentlemen. But enough about my world domination plans. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this week. Next week we will be back as usual, and I may even have an opportunity to have some early thoughts on the first major AAA Wizarding World video game, Hogwarts, coming to Xbox and PlayStation. So I may have some early thoughts on that one. We'll see. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Good night.